A lot of the trouble here is, if you are damaged or put out by anything that's gone on, whether it be sprayed by something over your roof, or you've lost your water supply, you've got to prove it. If the laws don't exist to protect you. There is a law that does though. It's the law of damages, straight out civil law. But to win a case at that, you've got to have the data, which means it's easier to do this, and I was being asked about this, it's easier to do this with quality issues, but for everybody in this stand, it's very expensive to do. I know how to do it, I have done it, but I don't have the money to do it. There's a couple of places I just itch to get out there with some water samples and send the stuff off and have them analysed, because I'd love to have the money to run the case.
How much would it cost for a sample?
Several $100s.
Maybe we should try and get a fighting fund together.
Yes, you need more than one sample though. See, for example, suppose you wanted to establish that there was a problem with something coming off these coops into the river. First of all, you've got to establish what the normal level of the contaminant is in the river. Then you've got to establish that when the event happened, like they had a spraying session, that there was a change, and then you also need to measure what happens after a rainfall, when things get washed off. The state, less it's hard, sort of does this randomly once every 3 months on some rivers, which is no way to test anything about what's happened. If you're serious, you've got to be that rigorous, and you've got to prove that connection. The quality thing is much easier to do than the quantity thing, because you know, you can have dry years, good years, the river flow goes up and down, you've got to see the pattern, you've got to know what happens seasonally, how the proportions work, you've actually got to measure the flow in the river at least daily. Now you can do it, I mean, it's possible to do, but you've got to do that, and you may have to do that for several years in order to see what's actually happened and the relationship between activities in the catchment and how the catchments behave. But if you've got that information, you've got an argument. Now, they bend over backwards not to have that data, and it's very interesting. Some of you will not know this. But several of the key rivers here in the northeast, the George is one of them, the Ansons is another, do not have continuous gauging data. They did not bother to fix the gauge when it went bung. And in a couple of cases, they managed to blow up the weir so there wouldn't be any data. Now, I just ask you, was the gauge on the George River closed down at the very moment that the George River was going to be converted into a plantation estate, or was that an accident? So it makes it very difficult now. I've shown how this can be recovered for the Little Swanport River, and as a result, nobody in water in Tasmania will talk to me, because I've been able to show how you can actually get information on that river and track it back to the records they do have, show the difference,